if you don't succeed, at least do so knowing you did it your way. Nothing worse than failing being someone you're not. And so bring your full self. Your students will love you that much more when they can see who you are in your fullness. Nothing worse than not having a connection to a student when you actually have something in common with that student, but the two you never have that conversation, whether it be a love for Jordan or a love for certain music or a love for comic books. And when you put up these barriers, you miss the connection. If you bring your full self to the profession and to the classroom, you will get way more out of it than you give.
It's the Empowerment Perspective Podcast, hosted by Demiso Josie and Mr. Kareem Spence. Stay empowered. Stay empowered. All right, welcome to yet another episode of the Empowerment Perspective Podcast. I go by the name of Dr. Demiso A. Josie, and I'm alongside Jamie's in the building. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
We lost a member. Mr. Petty could not join us tonight because he's somewhere being petty probably. Who knows what he's doing? That's his business, but we'll catch up with him later. On the previous podcast, we had my man Kyle Santillian out in Chicago, my man Randy Washington in New Jersey, construction owner, and we have Dave Anderson, the business bully, was on as well. And we were talking about specifically Black males and how they can get out of their way in terms of entrepreneurships and all that thing. So there's some real gems that they dropped in there. It's very informative for those African-American males that are interested in getting in business or becoming, going to business for yourself. Jamie, your general impressions about that podcast?
They brought some really good information to the table, lots of advice for young males that want to start their own business. Don't be afraid to go out on a whim and try something. You never know what can happen.
Right. So that was a good and powerful and impactful podcast on that one. If you followed us in season 1, we had Frank Spicer, who was at the time, he was the leader of Social Flow, big into artificial intelligence and technology out there. And he talked about steel sharpening steel. So that was another one if you are a budding entrepreneur that you might want to check out as well. So season 1, Steel Sharpening Steel. And then we had the last one. In traditional fashion, I haven't taken a personal story, Jamie, and I want you to answer the question if I should be taking this personal. Now, we're both educators, and we're dealing with COVID right now. So I deal with a lot of parents, and we talk and they give me their issues and their complaints about whether the kids should be remote, should they be hybrid, should they be fully integrated in the schools. And the conversation the other day I was having with a couple of parents about how they pay taxes, the kids should be fully in school, the kids don't get COVID and then not affected as big as adults and things of that nature. And I had to sit back and I'm thinking like, all right, let's go with that thinking, that logic. But as an educational leader, I have over 70 employees that are adults who do get affected by COVID, right? So I have to figure out a way to keep them safe as well as the students that come through my building. Like, should I be taking this personal that there's parents and people out here that don't see that side of what we're dealing with right now? Or should I just be like, I get it. The kids need to be in school. We all agree with that. But at the same time, I have to make sure that they're safe. Should I be taking this conversation personal that they kind of are not seeing the other side of it?
I think in this situation, absolutely not. This is not something that should be taken personally. Everybody has to do what's best for them, their families, their employees, and their own children and students. So it has nothing to do with you. Unfortunately, or fortunately, some people do feel like, if they pay taxes, they're entitled to certain things regardless of who is going to be affected by it. I think that when someone has their mind set on something, it's really hard to see the situation from someone else's perspective, even if they don't make necessarily good sense in what they're saying.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Now, I don't necessarily personally believe this myself, so I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. I get that you pay taxes in a town, but you also have a choice too, right? So if you don't like what's happening in that town and in taxes and stuff, you have the choice to move to another town or to send your kid to a private school or something along those lines. If you don't like what's going on in that school. The other side of too is that I'm not a doctor, for example. I can't go into a hospital and tell them how they should be running and treating patients, correct? So I'm in this space of, I get it as a parent. I understand that you want your kids back and all those things. But as an educational leader, there's certain things that it's just not connecting for me in regards to this situation. Your personal feelings as an educator, you obviously want the kids back. So where do you stand in this debate right now?
So I enjoy being in school with my students, but a few things. First of all, from an educator's perspective, you don't know what it's like in the classroom trying to teach one concept to basically two different groups of students at the same time. So really, I think that we need to step back and take a look at the integrity of what we're doing and if we're reaching everybody by doing it the way that we're doing. But also, not as an educator, but as a parent, I worry about my own children enough so that even though I go to school every day, I've opted for my own children to stay home and learn because I am scared of what is out there right now. So I think I do see it from different points of view. And again, I'm doing what I think is best for my family and my children. But if you don't come into the classroom every day, if you're not in the building with us every day, if you don't see what we're doing every day, then really you have no right to what we're doing.
I got it. It's a sensitive topic. We won't dive too deep into it right now, but I'm not going to take this one personal. As a parent and as an educator, I get both sides of the game. But I have a job that I have to do. And number one is the student safety and my staff safety. So I have to weigh that in as well. So that this, it's a tough subject right now. I will say this, though, and we talked about this in previous podcasts about COVID. There are some good things that can come out of this from an educational standpoint. Even as a teacher, you expanded your toolbox as far as technology is concerned. I know that remote might be even a good option for certain students. Like my kids are fully remote. They thrive in that environment. They prefer to do that. So that's important. So there's some good things that are coming out of the situation, depending on how we look at it. But today's topic, I want to dig into, we have a special guest in the building today. There's something that's a topic that's obviously near and dear to my heart. Being a Black male in education, especially in educational leadership. And in the area that we are in South Jersey, there's not a whole lot of us. We're kind of like, an endangered species, I would call it. So there's not a lot of Black male educators in the area that we are in, especially in the suburban areas and in the rural areas and in New Jersey. So a couple of years ago, actually, when I was in your building, Jamie, I went on this crusade to try to find Black educators to try to recruit them to the land, I would call it the unforgotten land, because there are African-American children and brown children that go to these schools that need to see Black male educators in all shape, forms, and fashion. So it's kind of hard to get them to, one, be comfortable teaching in those spaces. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But two, to even consider being in those spaces with those kids. So I went to the city, went to Philadelphia, went to my alma mater, Temple University, and I tried to recruit these people. But what I found, oddly enough, is when I went into these college classes, there still was not a whole lot of Black males in education in those classes, even though we were in the inner city. So I started looking and digging, trying to recruit, trying to figure out ways to bring people, Black males, into the educational arena. Then I stumbled upon this person, this gentleman that I have here, and his initiative that's out there, and it kind of just like it reawoken. And I'm glad to see that he has a mission out there to do the exactly what we're talking about, highlight Black educators and to recruit them. So I would like to welcome Curtis Valentine to the podcast. How you doing, sir?
I am glad to be here, man. Appreciate you inviting me out. I'm glad to be here with you and your co-host, Jamie.
All right. Thank you again for agreeing to be on. So you're the Deputy Director of Reinventing American School Projects. Let's just dive into that. What exactly is that project? What is it that you do?
Well, the project is a mission to create school systems in America that we call 21st century school systems, which are school systems that give school leaders like yourself a lot more autonomy in how to run their buildings, the budgets, who they hire, length of the school day, length of the school year, sort of to give you the flexibility and freedom to sort of individualize the experience for your students, staff, and teachers. At the same time, we believe that should come with accountability. That if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, there should be penalties based on all the autonomy you have. But that would give parents a lot more choice. The choice that you discussed earlier around just other options they have, and that could be a different school model. It could be Montessori. It could be a language immersion program. It could be visual performing arts. It could be governance. All the different things that we believe parents and students should have. And so this is my day job, but I also sit on the school board where I live here in Maryland. And so I interact with a lot of my fellow school board colleagues from around the country. And prior to COVID sort of coming out and really restricting our travel, we would travel to cities throughout the country and bring together stakeholders from the school board, the mayor, city council, parent groups, chambers of commerce. And many times they would say, this is the first time we've had all these folks in the same room talking about education. Mm-hmm. And we put on a 2 or 3 day summit, bring other school leaders from around the country who are doing this. And this model is really, really popular in places like Indianapolis, Denver. And so we would bring folks from Indianapolis and Denver, superintendents, school board members, funders, and sit down with your colleague. If you think that, what we're proposing for is a bridge too far, sit down with the superintendent from Indianapolis. Let her tell you, superintendent from city A, how this works, And so that allows us to sort of really grow this idea that the way schools are run right now, and school systems, more particular, are ones that are not really allowing the individuals, the folks that we hire, and we go into the temples and the Morehouses like my alma mater to recruit, that we're not giving them the true freedom to bring them full selves to the profession. Mm. And so that project allows us to have conversations and also to target certain groups. So in my role, I also started a series of articles I write for something called the NNPA, which is the National Newspapers Association, which is a consortium of over 200 Black newspapers around the country. And so you go back a generation ago, every city, in most cases right now, has a Black newspaper. In the DC area where I live, it's the Washington Informer, Baltimore, Camden, Philly, everyone has their own. And so I write for them because I'm kind of a throwback. I mean, people complain about how people of color are the narratives and the imagery of us in popular culture. And I'm like, well, that's not our culture. Mm-hmm. We don't control those, but we do have outlets. We do have podcasts like yours. And if people kind of turned away and used, and voted with our feet and gave folks like yourself and Roland Martin and other, when back when BET had Tavis Smiley, did the news at night. Like, I remember that, man. That was my news. Like, I didn't watch NBC. I watched Tavis Smiley because they want to give me what happened at this HBCU, what happened with this Black-owned business, what happened with this, and it wasn't all about gang violence and murder and all that stuff. And so again, I'm a throwback. I'm like, if we could control our own narrative, we can really recruit a whole different generation of people who truly understand their power.
Mm-hmm. Let's lean into the Black male educators narrative, right? So what I'm finding is that, especially in certain areas, like the Black males that are getting recruited and hired in certain places, they're getting hired more so, in at least the conversations that I've had, from a discipline angle more so than an educated angle. So you have this Black male that you're coming in, you're supposed to get these kids in line, in order, and it's not from an educational standpoint, like your knowledge base and what you actually can bring to that organization. Can you talk about that in the context of where we are today, and how can we change that narrative that we are more than just a disciplinarian in the classroom?
Well, I think this is part and parcel of the Real Men Teach campaign, and it's twofold. The mission, the what is recruitment and retention of male educators of color, and I mean specifically Black and Latinx. The how is re-imaging, which is how do we project back onto the world what it means to be a man, and that's through a lot of the posts you all are seeing. If you go to our Instagram or Twitter page or my Facebook or my LinkedIn, you're going to see it saying, you know what, here's what it looks like. Here's what men look like who stand up in their community. And it's not necessarily based on a profession. It's a bus driver. It's a coach. It's a deacon in your church. And these are things we're pushing back, saying, let's put out positive images of people who look like us and take back the narrative of what it means to be a man. And then let's use the resources that we have through we're generating through donations and selling of this apparel to now fund scholarships for men who are saying, I would love to be an educator, Curtis, but I'm a first generation college student. I got college loans and I can't afford, and being a teacher is a sacrifice. And I said, well, it is robbery that the obstacle to, a positive male educator in the classroom is the ability to pay for college. Now you talk about but this kind of goes back even further. So there's different ways of looking at this. So one, it is, do young men of color, my son who's 12 years old, does he want to be a teacher? And you ask it, he's not thinking about college loans. He has no idea how much it costs to be a teacher. The question is this: do you want to be a teacher? And what he's going to do, like all three of us are doing, is let me think about any examples of men of color who taught me in the past. What did they look like? How do they carry themselves? Do I want to emulate them? When they spoke to me, was it empowering? Was it uplifting? Was it are my experiences of that person ones that I want to sort of follow in their footsteps? And for the most part, it's a no. And that could be just Curtis. First of all, he had no swag. He didn't look he wasn't very attractive. People didn't like him. He was a pocket protector, short sleeve shirt with a button up. All he did was tell me to pull my pants up and go to class. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be able to be me. Curtis, I love history. I love to write. I love music. I love science. Can I do that and not have to be that guy? Absolutely. All right, Curtis. So what does it take to do that? All right, you have to graduate high school. You got to go to college. You got to get a degree, do the training, and then put the work in. Now, let's take it back to high school now. So just a number I just want to throw out really quickly. Every year, think about particularly Black men, 320,000 Black boys start high school every year in America, right? Only 160,000 of them finish high school in 4 years. So now we're cutting it in half, right? From those 160,000, only 50,000 of them attend a 4-year college. All right, so now you see the funnel. Okay, now of those 50,000 who go to 4 years college, only about 8,000 of them have Temple, Morehouse kind of pedigree and grades. So now you're thinking, Kurt, so we got 8,000, and now those 8,000 who are for the most part. Now don't get me wrong, of the 50,000, there's more than 8,000 who are potential educators, but for the most part, when the Temples and the UPenns and the Rutgers, Camdens and the Morehouses and the Hamptons and the Lincolns come, they're looking at those 8,000. And so now everyone's pulling from the same 8,000. IBM, Google, the medical schools, the law schools, the communication programs. And they're like, man, hold on, I got choices now. So first of all, teachers, y'all don't pay us nothing. I don't get no respect when I become a teacher. When I become a teacher, I gotta straight tuck in all my swag. I can't wear my Jordans to school. I can't be myself. I gotta dress like these, as we say down here, these Bamas who taught me. No. But we're saying, no, hold on, you got that all wrong. First of all, let's talk about how much teachers get paid. Particularly, that's one of the most secure jobs in America. You get into a good system and you do what you're supposed to be doing, you'll be fine. Then let's talk about respect. how do we start bringing respect back to the profession? This is what I'm doing with the marketing. When I put out a post, and we're doing 100 men, 100 days, and we can talk about that as well. The love and support that comes from mostly women, and Jamie could appreciate this. Men say, "Oh my gosh, he's a teacher, he's a classroom teacher, he's an elementary school teacher. He with the babies, and he got a beard. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, he is strong. He's tall, dark, and handsome, but he connects with young people. He has a presence. He's well spoken. He reads every day. He's constantly getting better. He has to adapt to his community. Oh my gosh, can I have 5 of them, please?" And so there's the thing. My thing is, I'm not waiting for nobody to tell me who I am. I've never done that. I've always had men in my life who told me that I could be anything I wanted to be. But the men who taught me were not all educators, and almost none of them had doctorates, and almost none of them had master's degrees. My bus driver told me I was amazing. That's all I needed to hear. When my coach told me you could be anything you wanted to be, that's all I needed to hear. When the guy at my church who I don't know what his degree was, I just know he was an usher, and he would come out, he had an usher, and he said, "Curtis, you are amazing." As a child, we don't distinguish between whether you got a doctor, because it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
When we highlight men and we say, first of all, we're not going to shine light on the men who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. We could do that. The media does that. Let's show them the Damisos.
Mm-hmm.
Let's show them these guys, and let those guys sort of usher in or give permission to the guys over here saying, "I don't fit in with y'all over here. Man, all that, podcasts and all that ain't me, bro. We all in the same pendulum swinging back and forth, because I could be you tomorrow."
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And so once we understand and so to fix this, it's about everything I'm talking about, but it's also about fixing the funnel. That 320, if we can get to 320,000 to start 9th grade to come and walk into a 4-year institution with the same level of preparation that the 8,000 currently get,
Mm-hmm.
we'll open this wide open. But right now we're pulling from the 8, and for me, I'm trying to work with the 8 in order to get to the 312,000 that not left behind, but are slowly trying to catch up.
Got you. There's a couple of things that we do at the Department Perspective to help that narrative. One is we when we go speak and we go do these things and work with schools and things, typically I'm not in a shirt like this. I just need to have a chance to get changed. I usually have a hoodie on, and we come in like we grew up, like this is what we are. We're changing the narrative. Just because I'm dressed like this doesn't determine my intelligence or anything, and how to relate to people. So the message that we're giving some of these young people is that you can still be yourself in these spaces. You don't have to conform to what you think it's supposed to be. Like, you can still be you in those spaces, but you have to have the heart to be you in those spaces and not feel like you got to be somebody different. So we're constantly trying to change that narrative and trying to change it from the perspective of the system of like, well, here's some educated Black males that are coming in. They have a lot to say. They can connect with kids, like you said. They can move different staff members around and do things and run in schools. Like, we might have to rethink about how we are recruiting and hiring. And we might have to rethink how we are actually approaching this thing called education. So that one of the things that we try to do is change that narrative on that. The other thing is, like you said, there's actually a whole lot of money to be made in education. So I don't know who told these kids that there's no money, and I'm making more. I didn't work in television, working ESPN, ABC. I had all these jobs in corporate America. I'm making way more money right now in education than I did working for these big networks and things. So we have to change that narrative as well. The issue that I'm seeing in our area is a lot of these Black males those who want to go into education, 9 times out of 10, they want to go back to their communities to help their communities in which they were raised in. So, but when we go into these suburban areas where I didn't have a Black teacher until I got to college. So from kindergarten all the way to college, I didn't have not one Black teacher, male or female, until I got to college. So one, I didn't see nobody that looked like me to be in that space. But two, I'm in the area. I don't know if you're familiar with Franklinville, New Jersey. It was on the news where the guys, they had the protest and the George Floyd guy was kneeling on the guy's neck and all that stuff. So I'm coming from this area that there's a lot of racial tensions. There's a lot of issues there. So it takes a really special person to want to go back to that neighborhood that you quote unquote escaped and all that hatred and all that stuff to want to come back and help those kids in that community. So part of the issue that I think we're finding in our neighborhoods and in South Jersey is that the ones that want to get in it, we're getting out. The ones that are out don't want to come here. Who wants to come to work and deal with that every single day? That's just another layer that you have to deal with on top of everything else that comes with being a Black male, especially.
Well, I would say everything we do, like move it. So right on this day, we think about tomorrow and the day after. We take every day after today with yesterday and every day before it in perspective. So when you ask someone, do you want to come back to your town and be a school teacher or help? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is visualize every other man who I've ever seen do that before. And I'm going to say, do I want to do that thing the way that guy does it? And almost 100% is no.
Mm-hmm.
When I became a school board member, I remember when someone reached out to me. I've been on the school board for 8 years here in Prince George's County, Maryland, where I live. And this is really where this impetus came from. I started something called the Male Educator Network, MEN acronym, to really recruit men. Because I was a teacher here, and I was like, I remember being a teacher here. It sucked. And so when I think about, someone said, Curtis, man, you should run for the school board. And I said, school board? People run for the school board are people who can't run for something else. Mm-hmm. Like people like you're not good enough to run for the city council or the legislature or the states. So I kind of took it as an insult, low key. I was like, oh, so you don't think I'm good enough for the state senate? Like this at the time, I was finished grad school. My master's at Harvard. I ran President Obama's campaign, and I'm like, yo, I'm feeling myself. And I'm thinking, I've never met a school board member who I ever respected.
Mm.
I'm thinking there's no way I'll be a school board member. And I'm thinking, well, I'm basing that off every other member I've ever heard running the school board. And then someone said, Kurt, and so I became a school board member. And I said, hold on, I could do this the way I want to do this. I could do it any way I want to. Like I could create my own I could create my own system of just trying to bring and highlight men. I could start my own fatherhood group. Start my own male educator group, and I got money to do it. I can use any high school I want. I could get a robocall and call every family in the school district. We had 125,000 kids. I can call every parent. I remember the first time I did a robocall, someone's like, I said, how often do members of the school board robocall? They said, never do. I said, do they know they can? Yeah. I'm doing a robocall. Can I do this? Can I do that? Sure, we can do that. Has anyone done before? No. It wasn't against the rules. It was my frame of reference was what I saw, but which is everyone's natural reaction. Someone sees your podcast and be like, you know what? Hey man, you do a podcast like the Miso. Well, no, I don't want to do one because I want to do it the way he did it. That's perfectly fine. Do it the way you want to do it, but don't use what you see as your box. And it's hard to get out of the, like when I started doing a real bit teach stuff. I said I see a lot of apparel, a lot of branding stuff online. I'm not gonna do it. Why not? Because you don't want to do it like them. Curtis, do it your way.
Mm-hmm.
But that's those are the people we always emulate. Everyone you see. I was watching some earlier with Cam Newton, and he interviewed about him being an icon. And he's saying, when I came into the NFL, I'm looking at every other Black quarterback who came before me, and I'm just like, I'm different. I dress different. My swag's different. I'm from the South Side of Atlanta. I got to do it my way. And he understood the courage it took to step out of the box. They said, and that's the way the hats he wears, the clothes he wears. He's like, bro, I'm different, and that's cool, but I'm different. And so my thing is, tell these young people, you could be a teacher the way you want to be a teacher, and let them say, so can I take my kids outside into the field? Go right ahead. Can I have music playing when the kids come in? Sure. Can I light like candles and like do some aromatherapy? Why not? Can I get rid of all the chairs and put all the kids on the floor and like bean bags? Absolutely. Like, bro, who told you couldn't do that? Like, so I teach right now, university. I teach a class. I'm an adjunct professor, and I was brought on part because the black student group at the school said I had never had a black professor at Mercer, Maryland, a black male professor. So I got a phone call. It's like, for years I applied. I wanted to become a professor. I'm applying. That's how God works. I got a phone call like, hey, you want to be a professor? Yeah, what's the interview process? Nah, start on Monday. Word? I've been applying for 5 years, and y'all gonna call me and say start on Monday? Cool. But I said, I gotta do it my way.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come into class, you hear Nipsey Hussle on the you come into class, you hearing Meek. It's like students come in like, what is going on? What is this guy talking about? I'm coming in like, okay, they're like, hold up. But you went to Morehouse and Harvard. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you traveled to 30 countries. Yeah. But you're not like anybody ever seen before. Uh-huh. You ready to rock? Okay. Then I'm bringing in all my friends. Every week I got a new speaker. I'm bringing in people every week.
Yeah.
I'm bringing the family. I'm bringing the neighborhood in. They're like, this is so different. Because guess what? I never used a professor. I went to one class before I taught at Maryland. I went to one class. I sat in the back. I said, oh, hell no. I'm talking about curse. I can't curse on that. I said, oh, heck no. I said, oh, hell no. I ain't teaching like him, because these students back here, they was like, nine down.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, no. If I'm going to do, I got to do me.
Uh-huh.
Tell these kids, you can do you and get some, and to your point, and get the summers off. We can go over. I'm like, yo, if I could do it, you know what? We'll give you 9 months. Then every summer for 3 months, we went to another country, South Africa, Brazil, Japan, Germany. We're going to do a summer, and then all that lined up is going to add up to probably 80 grand, which you put all together. And then you can do public speaking at night. Then you can do your own podcast. Then you can do your own apparel on the summertime. Then you could do your own summer camps. I got a brother right now, I know he's doing a book club. Started doing a book club. He started doing it for free. Then caught us in, right? I'm like, book club, virtual book club. Wife says, hey, time my little son in the book club. Reach out to him, book club. He sent me a link. Guess what it costs now? $59. I'm like, book club?
Mm-hmm.
It's worth $59. It's worth $59. Sure, we'll pay $59. That's another bag.
Yep.
But it's a book club. How much did he do? He probably read the book already. He gonna do 4 weekends in a row, give assignments. He gonna make a couple $1,000s. It's about also unleashing their ability to bring their full selves to it. Like, hey man, why you trying to be slow with all the ways you can raise money, be creative? Because we've been raised to sort of fit into the, this is how people who go to college talk and how they function. You work 9 to 5, you work 40 years. Like I'm from Jersey too, so I mean I'm from Central Jersey. I'm from Exit 9 near Rutgers.
Okay.
And back we grew up, it was get a job, work 40 years, get a pension, retire, and then like work in a church, retire. Like that's what you did. Now it's like you got to have 5 streams of income. You got to have, and a way to pay, all other ways to get, to become your full self in the world. And we have to raise our children that way, because if we do that, it's limitless.
Jamie, I'm chuckling because with our one of our presentations, how to reach and teach today's hip hop generation, he basically spoke exactly what we do, and we try to teach these educators. Come with a different perspective on being a student of your student and really knowing your students. So if you have students that appreciate the hip hop culture, we teach you how to bring that element into the classroom. And we talk all the time about stepping outside of the box. Like I'd say that so much, I'm blue in the face to all my teachers. I don't want to see the same old thing. I want you to leverage what your talent is and what your gift is and bring that into the classroom. I can't argue with success. If you got the kids coming, they're achieving, I don't care about curriculum stuff and all that stuff. I want you to make sure that these kids are learning. So, I mean, Jamie, he hit the nail on the head. Like when we go around and we talk about that, how important it is as a teacher to be able to step outside of your box, Jamie.
It is so important. If you go into a classroom and you have no connections to your students, they could care less what you're saying. But if you make those connections first, my students will do anything at all I ask them to do for me and you, because I have a connection with them. Mm-hmm. So because I took the time to make that connection, I can get them to do anything they need to do in anyone's classroom in order to get through this school year.
Mm. So important. That's so important. And I like to think that at least we're heading in a right direction in terms of education. At least when I first got into it, it's so rigid. Everyone was just trying to fit into that box. And I came in just because we're part of the hip hop generation, like you said, Curtis. This is how I'm going to do it. You either take it or leave it. You want me to write this curriculum? I write the curriculum. I'm going to teach it the way I teach it, and then the kids love me for that. So I just decided.
But to me, we started. I started a new line. So you can see the hoodies, the hoodies you can get from realmenteach.com. What I said was, I want to do again. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this differently than I've seen any other do apparel. I'm going to do colors that allow you to support the brand, make a statement about what you believe, but also represent for groups that you were already affiliated with. So I did this one for everybody I know who went to FAMU, right? So this FAMU had the colors. Then I said, all right, I'm gonna do colors for all the HBCUs and some of the PWI and all the fraternities. And so when you see some of the branding, you think, oh man, he wearing the purple and gold.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it got to say Omega somewhere on. Like, no, I can't put Omega on. I can't do that. But if you're an Omega, you could put this on in your hat, and now you're representing for two things. So that was a way to sort of cross brand. Second thing was, I said, you know what? Again, I'm not going to curse the dark. I'm going to light a candle. I said, there were men in popular culture and in hip hop who growing up, I said, you know what? Those were teachers.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have the title teachers, but I looked to them for as an influence. And one in particular, so right now, my kids and I and my wife and I are watching A Different World again. My wife and I grew up on A Different World, like a lot of folks, and it's on Netflix. And we watched go through the season, and at the end of the season, you all remember Dwayne Wayne went from being the perfect math SAT, 800 SAT to Professor Wayne. Now he's professor now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, hold up, I'm a professor now. He's a professor then. I'm thinking, well, when I was watching this at 12, 13 years old, now I'm looking at a black man as a professor. And I remember him. He had that saddlebag, right? The leather joint over the front with the bag in the front, had the glasses on and the blazer. He was different from Colonel Taylor. He was different from all the other professors who was what's my man name who played Benson? Robert Guillaume. Robert Guillaume was the professor. He was like, yo, I'm a young professor. I'm not the OG professor. I'm gonna do it my way. And I got a pretty wife. And I'm cool, and I'm a big Wizards fan. He did it his way. Right. And so we started, and so I said, hold up, there are other men in popular culture who I believe were examples for us that we kind of saw it. We might have internalized it, we might have overlooked it, we didn't. And so I did a hoodie that quoted one of the things that he said in the episode where he was going back and forth with Jada Pickett's character, and Colonel Taylor says, man, do you like teaching? He's like, yeah. He says, like, you get like a power trip out of being a teacher. He says, man, it's a war out here. And our greatest weapon is education. He says, I'm training Green Berets. And he said, I'm training Green Berets because this war out here on us they trying to kill us. This is 1993, bro. They trying to kill us out here, man. And I said, hold up. I got to start showing people, bro, I ain't cursing the darkness. I'm lighting candles showing, here's all the positive men who we had, and rappers. So we had Nas, we had, if you down in at Philly, the Southern Jersey, Poor Righteous Teachers. Mm-hmm. You had a Trenton Makes the World Take sign in the video then. Come on, Doc. I remember that.
Yeah.
And so we had those guys who were telling us about, they were the so-called conscious rappers, but those were the ones who those guys were reading books. They were telling us about gentrification. So my next hoodie I'm coming out with, and this is sort of, I'm going to give y'all an exclusive. The next one is going to highlight my man, Furious Styles from Boys in the Hood. Furious Styles was a dad, right? Furious Styles, he had little Malcolm X glasses on, and they came and see him after taking the SAT. He says, hey, man, what are y'all doing? Hey, SAT says, those SATs are culturally biased, right? They're like, oh, for real? He said, yo, take a ride with me. Take him to the hood. Like, hold on, man. See the sign? Yeah. Start talking about gentrification, buying. And he's schooling. It was like, yo, did I just miss the whole lesson on gentrification? That was in 90, what? That was 1990. Yeah. And Philadelphia, DC, Atlanta having conversations about gentrification 30 years later, when my man Furious is trying to school us, and these young men was having conversations with the OG. He was teaching. That was his classroom. This is my board. I'm giving y'all the science. This is how we get bread. How they come in, lower the value. Da, 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 da. Man, I'm trying to say we can, because popular culture is so important. Hip hop is still important. My daughter still know the lyrics to every song, and I got to sit down and sit in front of a book, which is, you know what, it's gonna happen. I can't, make the ocean go back into the sea. It's gonna happen. That's God is gonna say, Kurt, I'm gonna equip you to be able to handle this. But the idea is that we're also putting these positive influences in front of our kids that are popular culture. Some of them are like real life people. Think about Joe Clark and Lean on Me. That was an example. The young teacher in that movie. We had male educators and fathers who in our world. I'm trying to celebrate them because there was positive influences then.
Yeah, that work you're doing is so important, because like you just named a whole bunch of examples. Took me back to those scenes. I remember all those scenes. I remember all those songs. But I look at today's generation and I feel like there's a gap that's missing in terms of popular culture right now. There are the J. Cole's out there. You have those ones there. But I remember in middle school, you mentioned Poor Righteous Teachers, Public Enemy. Those were the reasons why I picked up the autobiography of Malcolm X. That were the reason why I understood W.E. Du Bois and all those things. That it wasn't the school that was teaching me these things. It was coming from the popular culture, and then that became a lifestyle, and it became me finding out who I am as a Black male in this society. Like, I got more education from popular culture, honestly, than I did from your traditional education. So we're people like you, people like us, we're trying to recreate this narrative and trying to find these spaces for young generations to be able to do that. So kind of like the each one teach one philosophy as well. I got one more serious question for you, and then we're going to do a this or that one. So we're big here on the Empowerment Perspective podcast about the why. We believe that if you have a strong why, it will drive the decisions that you make in life. And we encourage people to be honest about that why, because you can't lie about it, especially when times are difficult. Your behavior is a cause. It's a symptom, not the cause. Like, there's something that's driving your behavior. And what we're trying to get people to do is figure out what your why is, make it a healthy why so that your behavior changes and it's consistent. So we want to know, like, why is this work important to you? What is your why in regards to the work that you're doing?
Well, it's interesting. My why has changed in many ways. So I'll start off. My initial why was, like a lot of people, I looked at my father passed away 5 years ago, but my father was my first teacher, my superhero. And so my why for a long time was, if I could just make my dad proud. Like, it was an audience of one. Like, if I did something, I'm looking over to him. Is that good? Like, are you good with that? Mm. And so up until like a couple of years ago, I was all about making my father proud. Who was someone who was a Marine, didn't go to college, but very, very proud Black man from Rahway, New Jersey. Mm. And then when I became a father, you're like, oh, like this whole thing about, like, once I'm not going to live forever, and my son and daughter are going to be here, and there are other children who look like them. And then you turn around and you're saying, well, what happened to all those OGs who supported me, and they're getting older and they're passing away? And you're like, well, Curtis, like, you are the OG now. Like, it's your turn. Like, this is yours. And for a lot of us, we kind of like forgot, like, that the mantle was sitting on our lap. They gave it to us because they were tired or passed away. And it took us, like, understand, bro, like, you have the mantle, you need to do something with it. Like, well, no, they're still going to, these guys who supported me are still going to support the next generation, right? No. It don't skip. Mm-hmm. Like, now it's your turn. And so that was the motivation. Like, okay, now it's kind of like my turn as a give back. And so that's still a part of my why. But another part of my why, which I just discovered, and it's, if I didn't like learn this myself, I thought I wouldn't believe it. I have in my family, my full name is Curtis Chavis Valentine. On my Chavis side of my family, I have an ancestor going back to the 1700s who was the first Black person in America to ever go to college. His name is John Chavis. Look it up.
Mm-hmm.
John Chavis from Mecklenburg County, Virginia. I own a home in Mecklenburg County, Virginia right now, a summer home. My dad left me when he died. Came to Princeton, New Jersey in 1780s. We're talking the 16th century. And so fast forward 100 years later, I have another ancestor who's a Valentine, who a little closer to your neck of the woods,
Mm-hmm.
William Valentine, in 1915 became the headmaster of something called the Bordentown School in Bordentown, New Jersey. The Bordentown School was the only all-Black boarding school in America north of the Mason-Dixon. He ran that school from 1915 to 1953 when Brown v. Board dismantled all public segregated schools.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it was a campus. It was a boarding school. All the students took care of the grass, took care of the animals, cleaned everything. William Valentine was the most powerful Black man in the state of New Jersey from 1915 to 1953. And then also found out that my great grandparents are part of a history of Black people who started their own schools in the 1920s with someone called Julius Rosenwald, who with Booker T. Washington started 5,000 schools from Texas all the way up to Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
My great grandparents, Beverly and Martha Valentine, started those schools. So I am part of a continuum of Black people in education. It goes back 300 years, like literally. And so my why, in many ways, is Curtis. You are part of a history of Chavises and Valentines who have said education is the most important thing you can do, because understanding they kept education from us as African Americans because they knew the power of it. Listeners, always be mindful of the things they try to keep you from, because that's what the power is. When they were saying we can't, let me make this point before I go. When I was listening to a historian say, there was a discussion about why was it important to keep education from particularly the enslaved, in some cases the free people as well. They said, well, no, if they learn how to read, then they'll write, they'll try to write their own free papers, they can go to the plantation, or if they learn how to read, then maybe they'll get jobs that are above their station in life and will have no use for them. Well, someone said, well, actually the primary reason was that if they could read stories about distant lands, and their imagination would shift to places like oceans and mountains. And if their imagination shifted, they would want to see those things, and it'd be harder to control. And so education is the key to imagination. If you can control someone's imagination, you have to control their action. This is what Carter Woodson said in Education, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you control their thinking, these plantations didn't have fences, Doc. Fences around a plantation. They just said, if you go in, we'll catch you and we'll shoot you. Versus, remember the movie Life?
Mm-hmm.
Remember the gun line? The gun line, boss. The gun line, right? The gun line. There was no fence, bro.
Right.
They said if they read about oceans, in mountains, in towns, we can't control them. But if we just keep them ignorant of the world outside of this 10 acres, they'll never leave the 10 acres, and they'll never see what freedom looks like, and they'll even imagine it. What we'll tell them is outside of this plantation are wolves and things that'll hurt you, so you're protected here. But if we can get their imagination, this is why I want to end on this point. Imagination comes from education. I'm able to go and travel to over 30 countries in Africa and around the world because I just imagined it, and I said, I want to go now. To be a school teacher and envision yourself as a school teacher, you have to at least imagine yourself in that space, but doing it the way you want to do it, that makes you feel you're like a full person. And so if we give people imagination, the rest is history.
Super facts. Yes, absolutely. Jamie, I don't think I asked you this question ever. What's your why? In terms of education, in terms of what you do in education.
My why, I have two whys. I think that my first why is not my children. It is my children, but not in the sense of I'm teaching because of my children. I treat my students the way that I expect my children to be treated every single day. So when I go into school, I treat every single student that I come across the same way I expect my own children to be treated in school, without a doubt, every day, in good and bad. I'm empathetic. I feel bad when things go wrong, and I let the students know that I'm there for them. But also, I think that my why now, as I've been in education for a longer period of time, it's to be able to think outside the box and to do things my way, and to be able to answer when someone comes to me and says, why did you do it this way? Why didn't you do it that way? Well, I can do it this way, and I can prove that my way is just as good as anybody else's way, and maybe even better, because look at what I was able to get from these students by doing it this way. So those are my two whys.
Interesting. Never asked you that question. Now I know. Now it explains a lot. Let's just put it that way. So, Curtis, before we get into this or that and have a little bit of fun here, how can people get in contact with you? How can we get people to support the cause that you're doing? How can they find you?
Well, you can go to realmenteach.com. That's where you can see some of our work. You can see our mission, our team. You could buy apparel. You can make a donation, or you can nominate someone. What we're calling Real Men Teach 100. This is men around the country, around the world, who you believe represent what we believe, which is men stepping up our community. It's that group is not specific to minority men, and so if you have any race of man who you think this guy is someone who supports the community, we want to celebrate them. Please do that. If you're on Instagram, you go to officialrealmenteach.com. If you're on Twitter, it's Real Men Teach, the number 2. And then on Facebook and LinkedIn, Curtis Valentine. But if you're on social media or on website, you'll definitely be able to find us.
Got you. Thank you so much. So we're going to transition real quick. I got 4, this or that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 2 options. You pick one of the options, and you can elaborate if you don't want to. If not, it's okay. We'll start off easy, relatively easy. We're going to stick with hip hop in this one, the first 2. So ready. We're going to go with Nas or Jay-Z. The battle. He took a deep breath.
I go Jay-Z.
No,
I saw Jay-Z again in Jersey. I saw Jay-Z at a little club in Saraville, New Jersey in 1995 before his album dropped. And before Reasonable Doubt dropped, I saw him in a place called a Hunka Bunka. If anybody ever heard of that before. It was a little hole in the wall club. I saw him in 1995 before I went to, and I saw him again in college in Morehouse when he came for our homecoming. But I've seen him again. I saw him before his album even dropped. He was Uchi Wally Wally. That's the song. Y'all remember that?
So I'm gonna go. Listen, we're gonna go Reasonable Doubt or Illmatic.
Again, I'm gonna go Reasonable Doubt, man. I think Jay-Z allowed me to do a lot of what Nas, to think a little bit, but also to kind of relax. I mean, again, I got books. You can see I love to read, but I also love to to chill too. So I need balance. And Nas will have you like, bro, like, okay, I get you, man. Like you conscious. You read books. That's cool. But you don't dance, man. Like, let's dance a little bit and then go back to that. Like, I mean, so Jay-Z gave me a little bit of both.
Got the balance. All right. In terms of a teacher in hip hop, KRS-One or Public Enemy?
I like KRS-One. And it was more so like, I think Public Enemy seemed more like punitive, but KRS, as a teacher, I would probably prefer KRS over Chuck D. KRS seemed to be a little more soft with it. He was kind of like, you think about self-destruction and his verses in there. As a kid, I was always like, if you yelled at me, it was a rap. Like,
that was it.
I'm gonna go into my little turtle hole. But if you could kind of like, do it persuasively, you got me.
Right. All right. In terms of an educator, Larry Fishburne in Higher Learning or in Boys in the Hood?
Again, Boys in the Hood, because I was in my class the other day. I showed my students a video, a TED Talk with someone who was talking about education, and they interviewed some middle school students and said, "What's a good teacher?" And one of his students said, "A teacher is not a teacher." And he said, "What does that mean?" He says, "Well, what students are saying is a good teacher is not someone who's necessarily in front of a classroom, in front of a chalkboard, kind of like giving me assignments, grading me. A teacher is someone who can teach me without me knowing I'm learning. And so I think his character in Boys in the Hood was, that father figure who taught his son, obviously, and also his son's friends, but it wasn't like graded, and it wasn't one where he had assignments. So I would definitely say furious style.
Gotcha. Last one, New Jersey or Maryland?
I'm from Jersey, man. I am Jersey. I love Maryland. I teach at Maryland. Maryland has adopted me. Again, I'm a public official here. I love this place, but Jersey is home. My mom, dad, born and raised in Jersey. Mom from Roselle, Linden. My dad from Rahway. If I get on the phone with somebody from Jersey, everything starts coming out. But just the way that I grew up in Jersey. Jersey has 500 school districts, and so I grew up in a small town environment that allowed me to be in this very nurturing environment. We had one high school in my town, one middle school, and I'm the man I am today because of that upbringing, education, the support, and the pipeline of men who were brought up through this system by other great men who I'm just trying to emulate every day with this campaign.
Perfect. Well, Curtis, we definitely thank you for being on today and taking the time to bless us with your presence. Last words. There's a young black male that's sitting in some classroom somewhere in America. What do you say to him in terms, and maybe want to be in education, kind of on the fence? Like, what do you say to him?
It's quite simple, man. Be you. You as an individual are amazing. God has given you a number of gifts that you have yet to bring to the world. And don't tuck any of that in. If you don't succeed, at least do so knowing you did it your way. Nothing worse than failing, being someone you're not. And so bring your full self. Your students will love you that much more when they can see who you are in your fullness. Nothing worse than not having a connection to a student when you actually have something in common with that student, but the two of you never have that conversation, whether it be a love for Jordans or a love for certain music or a love for comic books. And when you put up these barriers, you miss the connection. If you bring your full self to the profession and to the classroom, you will get way more out of it than you give. And so, the return on that investment is something you can't put a price tag on. When an educator removes himself from a classroom, those students will never forget you. We all remember that educator. Now that you ask, we all remember that teacher who changed our lives. And and some of them have a positive and some of them a negative. We're saying the positive ones, you're like, you know what? If it wasn't for Mrs. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, I wouldn't be here. But also say, if it wasn't for this person, I wouldn't be here either because they really, robbed me of my dreams. You have the power to shape the world. And it's up to you to take that mantle and bring your full self to the most important profession in the world.
Perfect. Jamie, any last words before we get out of here?
Not just, again, I feel like I've said this many times, but don't ever let anyone put you inside of a box. If you think that you're capable of doing something, don't be afraid to make goals and get, aim towards that dream. There's a reason, there's a purpose for you to get there if that's what you really think you were meant to do.
Perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. Just some last housekeeping things. Big shout out to the American Higher Education Alliance, who will be speaking there on how to develop relationships in education and higher education, adult education. That's in March, I believe March 11th. I'll get the exact date soon. But big shout out to the World Education Summit. I will be speaking there on March 24th. And unfortunately, because COVID, I won't be in the UK, but we'll deal with it virtually that way. So I'm going to put that link up there, too, for all you educators. There's some big heavy hitters that are on there, DeWitt and all these other guys that are on there. So I'm honored and blessed to be a part of that as well. But be on the lookout for that. Again, shout out to the Innovative School Summit. Hopefully we get down in Atlanta once this thing is all cleared up, and we'll hit up probably Vegas. We're looking at hopefully San Antonio, Orlando, all of those places. So shout out to them as well. And shout out to all the educators. Right? And I just want to give you a shout out because of everything that you're going through. The work that you are doing is so, so important. You get up and go to work every single day, despite, putting your life at risk literally every day with this COVID thing that's going around. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate the fact that you are in this profession and giving these people an opportunity and hope. Because at the end of the day, somebody did that for you. And I'm glad that you are passing that on to somebody else. The educational leaders out there as well, I feel your pain. I'm in it with you. It's not easy, but this is God's work. This is the gift that you have been given. So just lean into it, enjoy it, and then and hopefully we're raising a generation that's going to be better than what we are doing. So Curtis, again, thank you so much, and we'll definitely keep in touch and promote the stuff that you're doing out there because it is important. Shout out to Kareem. We'll get you next time, Mr. Petty Spence, but he's out there actually helping kids right now. So I can't be complaining about him not being here. But as always, you can find us on the empowermentperspective.com, YouTube, iTunes, all of the social media platforms, yada, yada, yada. But until next time, stay empowered.